Guys, what's going on? James here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the Denver Broncos firing head coach Vance Joseph after back-to-back losing seasons. It wasn't a good situation. It was not a good situation. I really like John Elway and what he's done with this Denver Broncos organization, and all in all, I do like Vance Joseph and what he was able to do with this Denver Broncos defense, but the offensive side of the ball left a lot to be desired on that side of the ball. They never really got an official quarterback in, especially this year with Case Keenum being in. He's kind of more of a bridge quarterback than anything. I will say they had some really nice pieces on the defensive side of the ball, but the offense was not enough. It led to back-to-back losing records, and it resulted in the firing of Vance Joseph. So what happens now for not only Vance Joseph, but for the Denver Broncos? Well, to start, Vance Joseph, again, he's probably going to get a job somewhere like most of these head coaches that have been fired. He's more likely than not going to get a job somewhere. He's still all a really good defensive coordinator. I think he could end up on a team, with another coaching vacancy. Maybe he'll end up on the Atlanta Falcons. They just fired all three of their coordinators. Maybe he'll end up on another team like the New York Jets, like possibly the Green Bay Packers, the Cleveland Browns, maybe even the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who knows? But Vance Joseph should have a job relatively easily. Moving on to the Denver Broncos, what's going to happen with them now? Well, like I've said, usually teams that get rid of defensive or offensive minded coaches, they usually make the switch to the opposite side. Vance Joseph was more of a defensive minded coach, and I expect the Broncos to possibly go more on the offensive side of the ball. I guess you can never rule out Gary Kubiak coming back, because that's Gary Kubiak, and him and John Elway are like best friends apparently. But I do expect the Broncos to go for more of an offensive minded coach. There are good defensive minded guys out there, guys like Chris Richard, the Cowboys assistant coach, Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. He is also a really high tier defensive coordinator in my opinion. I think he'll get an interview. I think the Broncos even requested an interview with Vic Fangio. Those are two of the top defensive options on that side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, there's a lot of guys. Bynemi, the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, I think could easily get a look in Denver, especially considering that they're rivals and all that. I'm sure John Elway would love to steal a really nice coordinator away from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a high tier option. You can never count out guys like Jim Harbaugh, especially with John Elway being John Elway. John Elway basically does whatever he wants, and that's fine. That's completely fine. But John Elway, he makes a lot of interesting decisions, and that would be a really high tier move for the Denver Broncos to make. Another guy who was just recently released, Adam Gase, he could be another option for this team as well. I really like him. I think Adam Gase, if he does get a really good quarterback in, he can do some really nice things. The Denver Broncos aren't necessarily in the best place to get a quarterback, but that isn't to say that there aren't options in the draft and free agency, and they could even make a trade. Who knows? But regardless, if you're going to have a brand new coach, maybe you might want a new quarterback to pair him up with that new coach as well, be it through the draft or free agency. I really like Case Keenum, but he obviously isn't a franchise guy, so you need to get a franchise guy in there. That's probably step one after you bring in a new head coach. In this Denver Broncos team, it's really good. It's pretty good. I know they only won, I believe, 6 or 7 games this year, but all things considered, I think they have a lot of talent on this team. They did get rid of Demaryius Thomas, traded him away for a pick or two. That'll help out building up some of that wide receiver depth that's going to be left over. I don't really know what's going to happen with Emmanuel Sanders, but you still have Phillip Lindsay at the running back position, who has turned into one of the better dual usage running backs in the league. That guy can not only be a running back, he can be a receiving back as well. You also have Royce Freeman there, who's just a powerhouse of a running back. The offensive line is pretty decent, all things considered. I think they do need to work on some things, but all in all, I like that unit a lot. The main bread and butter for this team, though, right now is the defensive side of the ball. Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. Those two can really run a defense themselves. Then you factor in a really strong secondary with cornerbacks Chris Harris and Bradley Roby. This Denver Broncos defense is really, really good. So I feel now that the defense has already been established, you bring in an offensive guy, you have him focus on the quarterback position, you have him focus on using Phillip Lindsay a little bit more, get Emmanuel Sanders involved a little bit more. I like Courtland Sutton as well. I think he's a really nice wide receiver. He can do some pretty good things for this team. The Broncos, I feel, aren't very far away from being in contention for a playoff spot, especially when you factor in that the offseason hasn't even started yet. You bring in a new quarterback, somebody to challenge Case Keenum. I think you could do a lot worse than Case Keenum, but I feel you could get a little bit of better options than Case Keenum. I think that Case Keenum can do fine if you bring in the right coach, because look what he did in Minnesota. He took him all the way to the NFC Championship game. But I feel that he would need an offensive type guru to help lead that offense to greater heights, especially factoring guys like Royce Freeman, Phillip Lindsay, Courtland Sutton, and Emmanuel Sanders. There's some very nice offensive pieces on there. You have the defense now. You just need to bring in somebody who can focus and pinpoint the problems on this offense and really work to overall correct them. So, Denver Broncos fans, let me know down in the comment section below, who do you want to be the new head coach for the Denver Broncos? I like guys like Adam Gase is a big one. Bainimi from the Kansas City Chiefs. I can't remember his first name. I apologize for that. But the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, I think, is a really big option. And then even on the defensive side of the ball, Chris Richard, Vic Fangio, I think those guys should be considered as well. And who knows, maybe you can never count out Josh McDaniels. I know Josh McDaniels is a pretty toxic guy, but still, you know, you never know. You never know. Also, some dark horse candidates, Todd Monken from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because he did some phenomenal things with that Bucs offense this past season. So let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comment section below. Broncos fans, let me know what you think about Vance Joseph being fired, and what do you think about who his potential replacement should be. Bucs fans, don't worry, still got you covered. Still going to be doing Bucs stuff as it comes up in the news feeds. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed. And as always, I'll see you in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.